Joining us in our studio, we welcome you, and to those of you who are joining us via live stream around the country and perhaps globally, we welcome you. And we welcome you to the second annual Global Eyewitness Showcase. My name is Bill Dolman, and I will be your host for the evening. The Global Eyewitness Program is one of the marquee opportunities that's available to the University of Nebraska students here in Lincoln who want to experience another part of the world and bring that part of the world back to Lincoln and showcase their talents, their creativity, skills, and really the product of their own intellectual curiosity. And tonight we are here to celebrate that. We begin tonight by welcoming the Dean of the College of Journalism and Mass Communications, Sherry Vail, to talk about the endowment that funds the Global Eyewitness Program. Dean Vail.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Sherry Vail. I'm the Dean of the college, and this program has been around for quite a while now. This is the second iteration that we're doing it here, showcasing the students' work from Vietnam. The Buffett Mengelson Sartori Chair and the Buffett Fund are what support this program. The program was established by Howard Buffett primarily, who then brought in 2 additional photographers to be able to continue to support the work that the students are doing. The idea behind it was that concern was that students in Nebraska may not realize how big the world is and, quite honestly, how poor the world is. He wanted the program to focus on areas of need, especially places where conflict has been and has created hardships for the individuals who live there. Key focus, a lot of Buffett's work focuses on hunger and recognizing the plight of the world, and to be able to document that and make sure that we're bringing it back so that we understand here in Nebraska what it's like around the world, and to consider how fortunate we are and what we can do to then invest in the world to be able to address some of these concerns. So I appreciate the students' work. I'm excited to see the rest of it. The gallery has been fabulous, but it's hard work. This program is hard. Think of it. It is a all-expense-paid trip to another country. We had 4 students who committed to it all the way through. It's hard. You are working the entire time. You're exposing yourself to things that make you very uncomfortable. And you're going into a whole different culture that is going to challenge you and your beliefs and how you see the world. And it's really important work. So I'm so proud of you all for completing this program, going through it, and I look forward to the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Vale. And now I'd like to bring in Professor Sean Hill to start the evening off with a behind-the-scenes look at the students' time in Vietnam and some of their stories and their thoughts during their time in country. Professor Hill.
Thank you. So as you saw backstage, some of the work that the students did, I also wanted to show you the behind-the-scenes of them working and also to give you a feel of what they were thinking during the time they were there. So this is my take on them.
Last time we went out for New Year's, we arrived in Ho Chi Minh City. Oh man, it was like 11:30 when we got to the hotel. Sean's like, you gotta go out. And I'm like, I'm looking around the city and I'm like, yeah, we gotta go out. We got people drinking, people having fun. We saw some queens. They were very entertaining. Yesterday was the first day of my project. Me and Sean went out to Con Chim Island. This is a very they call it it's an ecotourism spot. Con Chim Island, it's an ecotourism spot. Everyone is just kind of living their lives and farming and providing for themselves, but then they allow tourists to come in and see their way of living. And it was pretty neat. I'm still kind of developing my thoughts on the island, but overall, it was very, very nice. No, but it was odd. It was super flattering. It's very flattering every time. Even though it's just happened to me once, it is flattering for people to look at you and notice you and be like, wow, that is different. So, yep, I got swarmed by a bunch of fangirls. The footage is there. I can say it. That's what happened.
Ho Chi Minh on New Year's. We're heading back to the hotel. Good shots. I made friends. Yeah. It's 10:26 on January 1st. We woke up, had breakfast. It was awesome. Now we're out taking photos. It's really pretty. Some guy handed Sean and I coconuts, and then Sean had to pay for it. am very sad that it's unlikely that I will ever see my subject or his family ever again. That's really sad, and I hope that I do see them again. I wish that I had been able to spend more time with them.
Today I am here on the on-campus fishery, which I have grown to be in love with. I'm really excited to be here. I'm getting some great pictures. My subject is late because he had a class, which is fine. So I'm just hanging out until he gets here, trying to get some shots of everything.
Appendicitis. So we rushed to Ho Chi Minh City and Sean came with me and I got surgery, which I was scared out of my mind for, but it went well. Everything's good.
Hey vlog. It's our last morning in Tra Vinh. I just went to the hatchery one more time. Sad to say bye to the frogs. Hayden came. And there's Tree.
It's like Death Star.
Smile!
Like in front.
Wave! There we go. So now we're going back to the hotel and we're gonna check out and we're gonna go to Ho Chi Minh. And I get my stitches out tomorrow.
Word.
Word up.
I genuinely just like spending time with Hui, and like I have had subjects before, but I've never had a subject my own age, and so I did like the 24-hour story for Perry Photojournalism, and like Anne was super sweet. I like spending time with her, but she's also like a lady in her upper 60s, and so it's really interesting for me, and especially because here things are just different, because we're also doing cultural exchanges, and so like I've had a little bit of trouble like reminding Hui sometimes like I'm also there to take photos, because he just wants to like show me parts of his culture.
Professor Hill, thank you very much for that, giving us a peek inside of the trip that helped put all these projects together that we're about to see. An incredible experience, and I think that there are some inside stories that we may never know that are going to be a part of what you are sharing tonight. But thank you so much for that. Great behind the scenes. All right, it's time to get the presentations underway. And to start the student showcase is a senior broadcast major from Des Moines, Iowa, Marissa Lindemann. Not yet.
Hi, everybody. It's going to be tough to follow that up, I'm not going to lie. Okay. All right, I want to start this off by showing some of my photos from my gallery. This will kind of have three parts to this presentation. We're going to start with showing our gallery photos, and then we're going to show our photo stories, which follow my subject, and then we'll show our documentary at the end. So this is from our very first night. We landed in Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon. It was around 11:30 p.m., as Hayden reminded us earlier. And it was very, very late, but it was like from the moment we got there, we were expected to put in the work and to start engaging with the culture and the people around us. And this is very quintessential to what it's like to land in Ho Chi Minh City on New Year's, is you're constantly going to be boxed in by people on all sides. This is a city of 10 million people. And I hadn't personally experienced that. I'm from a small town of Iowa, so I'd never been surrounded by that many people, which was a bit of a culture shock, which kind of leads into what it's like to be in the market. A lot of people asked me back there if this was a fish. I'd like to reassure you it's not a fish. It's just fruits. But they do have two seeds that are basically placed like eyeballs. Yeah, but they have a lot of dried fruits. They just have a lot of commodities in markets. It's like walking into your own city, and you're going to be surrounded on all sides by different merchandise. This is a conical hat, or a non la. It usually hangs outside doors as kind of decorative, or outside homes. People do still wear them a lot to protect from the sun in Vietnam, but it was at least more common for me to see them as decorations because they're kind of a cultural symbol. And this is an alocasia plant. I spent a lot of time just walking around downtown Tra Vinh. I had a bit of downtime. There was trouble with my story, and so I wanted to make the most of that time that I had while I was still figuring out what my story would be. And so I would just wander from shop to shop and see what people had, and this was outside a plant owner's shop, and I got to learn about the plants that they were growing there and what it was like to be a plant owner. I've gotten a lot of questions about this too. This is Sol. He's a guard dog. It's a little bit different than the way that you would perceive a guard dog here in the United States. We kind of expect like a big shepherd to be intimidating someone. That's not necessarily the case. Animals are treated very differently in Vietnam. There's a different cultural expectation that we noted there. But his job is just to bark. If he sees anyone approaching the home late at night, or during the day, he'll just alert people by barking that they're approaching. And so he spent most of his days that I was there just waiting outside the house in case somebody approached. And this is Santi Sin. I got to spend a lot of time with her. She's one of the temple elders, and she's also the great aunt of Leah's photo story, so you'll get to see a bit more later. But she, the temple is really interesting to me. They practice a lot of Theravada Buddhism, if you're a Khmer person in Vietnam. And so I got to wake up before dawn. I believe this was about 4:30 in the morning. And I walked with her and her friends. They start off at their home, and they'll carry the basket with food on either ends to balance it out. And it's called a dongon tray, and it's for the monks who are at the temple, and they provide the food as temple elders. And they'll go from door to door, and they'll kind of collect their friends, and they'll walk all together to the temple even before the monks get there. And then when they sit down and start praying, after the sun rises, when the monks come in, and then they'll share a meal together. This is outside a different temple. This lady was selling incense. As you walk into the temple, you usually burn incense. And so if you forgot yours at home, you can collect some at the gate. This was another time I was wandering around kind of downtown Tra Vinh, just trying to see what it was like to be in the city. And I found this lady who actually reminds me a lot of my grandma Sue, so that was special for me. She's been a seamstress since she was 22 years old, and she's actually patching up pants for one of her grandchildren in this photo. And so that reminded me of my grandma a lot, who's also been patching up my pants for a really long time. And this is another example of what it's just like to be on the streets of Traven. There's a lot of sales of just fruits and whatever vendors have available. And so he's selling watermelons. And then I believe this is my last photo on one of my last days that we were in Ho Chi Minh City. We came back and this vendor was selling fruits. And so I just was able to capture this special moment, which I also think helps show what it's like to be in a market. They really use every square inch of space available to share their products. All right, and now it's time to share some of my photo story. My photo story is about a musician named Son Li Hui. He's incredibly talented. He plays around 20 different instruments, and more than anything, he wants to preserve his culture as a Khmer person through music. This is a rehearsal that he was at Do Re Mi Music Center with some of his bandmates. So the Khmer people are an ethnic minority in Vietnam, and a lot of them are concentrated in Tra Vinh as a province, which is where my story takes place. Hui is a fourth-year student at Tra Vinh University, and he's originally from a different province, but he came to TVU because they are the only university in Vietnam that has a Khmer music program, and that was really important for him to preserve his culture there. This is Hui with one of his teachers. As a student, he puts in a lot of hours playing music. I was really impressed as a fellow student to see how many hours he puts in. And so this is a trousseau that he's playing, which is kind of, I would equate it to a violin here in the United States. And so it only has 2 strings, which makes it even more difficult to play. And he spent many, many years. This is one of the first instruments that he learned. This is a different instrument. This is a chapé don vang. Forgive me for these pronunciations, but it's a storytelling instrument, and a lot of Khmer music functions in that method. It's an oral tradition, so whoever the elder of the village is, they pass it on to their children, who pass it on to their children, which is part of the crux of the story, is that if you're only passing it on to your children are more interested in modern music, or the youth are more interested in modern music, it's kind of difficult to keep that tradition alive, and especially when there's so many stories that are only passed as an oral tradition from person to person. And this is at the Khmer Arts and Culture Club. Hui was also a very active member of that. And I got to spend some time learning some Khmer traditional dances. I promise I'll demonstrate after the show if you come up to me. But he also got the privilege of teaching Khmer instruments to other Khmer people at the club who perhaps hadn't learned them. And this is that chapé don vang again. It's a very important for storytelling. So every single village has its own song. And there are different songs, there are different orchestras for every single important occasion in a Khmer person's life, whether that's a wedding, a birthday, the Tet festival. And so that's how integral music is to Khmer culture. And this is, once again, we're back at rehearsal. At this point, he's getting ready for a performance called Eastern Night, the colors and sounds of Vietnamese Tet. And he's going to perform in front of the school, so the teacher asked him to do a performance with some of his bandmates that blends traditional music with modern music, which was the first time that they were actually preparing to do this. So I spent a lot of late nights with him in rehearsal. And then, of course, Hui is a student, too. He actually wants to be a music teacher when he's done graduating, and he wants to perform quite a bit and travel the country. So he has to finish his exams. I was so grateful to him because this was his finals week that I was there working on this story, and he still found the time for me. I know if you're a student, you're like, I could not imagine someone following me around with a camera during my finals week, but he definitely made time for me, which I really, really appreciated. But there was, of course, a lot of studying because he had to finish his final exams. And an interesting thing that I'm really glad they're not doing at the College of Journalism is they have to write them all by hand, and it's to teach the students patience. So lucky for us, you can thank your professors that we do not have to write our exams by hand. And this is Hui getting some feedback from one of his professors. They have a lot of guest professors that come to lecture at TVU because it's kind of in danger of disappearing. There's not many musicians who are able to pass on their skills at this point, so they have guest musicians come in to lecture. He's also composing in this picture, and so he was showing one of his compositions to his professor. He is the only student in that class who composes in Khmer. And then, of course, this wouldn't be a story in Vietnam without the motorbike. This is really, really unique for me as a student on campus to see, like, instead of all the parking garages and the limited parking space, they have so many motorbikes to get around on, and everyone seems to have their own motorbike. This is right before the Easter night performance. Him and his friends started tuning the troso, which is a little bit of a difficult process. It's helpful to have two people there to tune it. And then at the end of the day, that's him leaving from Do Re Mi after another rehearsal. Alrighty, now it's time for my documentary. In music terms, decrescendo refers to a gradual decrease in volume or loudness over time. And I've mentioned this a little bit, but that term I think is very fitting when we think about the problem currently facing many Khmer musicians in Vietnam. Their music is fading, and their people's culture is tied intrinsically to music. Every special occasion has music included, and every village has their own song. Because this is an oral tradition that's been passed down from generation to generation, and that music is now in danger of disappearing, Wee is not accepting that. He's obviously very passionate about preserving traditional music. My documentary will hopefully shine some light on the issue and the work being done to preserve Khmer traditional music in Vietnam. So enjoy the documentary.
Năng khiếu mà từ nhỏ em đã có. Đó chính là khi mà nhỏ em trong một buổi tập võ thì phụ huynh có hỏi là hiện tại bây giờ là em muốn chọn đi học nhạc tại chùa hay là tiếp tục con đường học võ. Thì không biết sao mỗi lần em cảm thấy nghe được âm nhạc Khmer và cũng như là thấy những người nhạc công biểu diễn á, thì trong tim em lại có một cái gì đó rất là yêu mến và rất là muốn biểu diễn. Thì em tên là Sơn Lý Quý, hiện tại là em là sinh viên năm 4 chuyên ngành biểu diễn nhạc cụ truyền thống tại khoa ngôn ngữ văn hóa nghệ thuật Khmer Nam Bộ, thuộc trường ngôn ngữ văn hóa nghệ thuật Khmer Nam Bộ Nhân Văn và thuộc trường Đại học Trà Vinh.
Nói chung là bạn Quý cũng là một sinh viên rất là đa tài. Trong khi đó là bạn quê ở Sóc Trăng nhưng mà bạn qua Trà Vinh học, bạn tiếp thu rất là nhiều.
Dạ, và cảm xúc của em khi lần đầu tiên em đến ở đây em rất là vui và cảm thấy là đây là một vùng đất rất là nổi tiếng về văn hóa về nhạc cụ truyền thống cũng như là các văn hóa truyền thống người Khmer mình. Thì sau khi mà một buổi trên đường em đang đi học thì em đang có thấy một cụ đang biểu diễn là hình nhạc cụ này. Cụ vừa đàn vừa hát. Thì lúc đó là em thì rất là đam mê âm nhạc, em lại tò mò, hứng thú là muốn tìm hiểu đến thầy và xin thầy để học nhạc cụ này. Nhạc cụ này bởi vì hiện tại ở khu vực đồng bằng sông Cửu Long chúng ta rất hiếm để chúng ta đếm trên đầu ngón tay những nhạc công còn biểu diễn là hình nhạc cụ này. Với lòng yêu mến và cũng như là muốn giữ gìn những ngọn lửa này thì cho đến ngày nay thì em vẫn tiếp tục học hỏi cũng như là tiếp thu những cái tinh hoa văn hóa của ông cha ta để lại. Đó chính là những cái văn hóa nhạc cụ truyền thống của người Khmer mình.
Âm nhạc nó một phần rất là quan trọng trong đó, giống như là trong đời sống sinh hoạt hàng ngày của người Khmer. Với nếu có những cái lễ hội như trong chùa này kia, người ta sẽ sử dụng âm nhạc để tạo những niềm vui rộn ràng này kia cho cái khuôn sóc nó rộn ràng hơn. Với trong những ngày cưới thì có thể là âm nhạc nó phục vụ cho đôi uyên ương được có ý nghĩa văn hóa trong đó nó được hạnh phúc hơn. Hoặc có khi người ta sử dụng âm nhạc dùng để cúng tổ này kia, cúng tổ chơi để cúng tổ, có khi là sử dụng âm nhạc dùng để cổ vũ một đội dân ngo nào đó người ta. Nếu nhạc cụ trò xô nó xuất hiện rất là từ lâu đời rồi. Thì cái trò xô thì người ta sẽ có 2 dây để kéo với một cái kéo để kéo đàn trò xô. thì cái dây số 1 á, là nó hơi bị trầm một xíu, dây số 2 là dây bên trên đó là nó sẽ bị cao độ nó cao hơn một khoảng 5 khoảng 6 gì đó.
Tết là còn nhiều bài hay vui.
Cái âm nhạc của người Khmer nó rất là phong phú và nhiều thể loại đa dạng này kia, thì những cái phong tục, những lễ hội này kia nó sẽ có những dàn nhạc đặc trưng khác nhau. Bởi vì cái dàn nhạc truyền thống của mình hiện tại là nó cũng bị ảnh hưởng đến giới trẻ đó, nhạc hiện đại, nên nếu mình không có giữ cái nét của mình nó sẽ bị phai mờ, và sau đó lúc đó nó sẽ bị dần mất đi. Nên cái việc giữ gìn cái bản sắc văn hóa truyền thống của mình đó là một phần rất là quan trọng.
Dạ, đầu tiên thì nếu như bản thân mình là người con Khmer đang sinh sống tại Việt Nam, thì điều đó thì em cảm thấy là hiện tại thì đứa trẻ hiện tại không còn mặn mà với nhạc cụ truyền thống.
Nếu gõ những trên nền tảng xã hội như là mình muốn nghe bài đó, có khi người ta không có, tại vì theo truyền miệng thôi. Bên tôi có những bài hát này kia hồi lúc đó còn giữ lại, mình đi tìm tòi chỗ đó thì người ta sẽ giảng dạy hoặc là hướng dẫn mình những cái bài hát đó sao cái mình tiếp thu lại, mình đi phun sóc khác. Họ cũng có những bài hát riêng của họ.
Bởi vì em sẽ nghĩ là nếu cứ tiếp tục như vậy thì chúng ta sẽ tham sao thất bản, cái bài bản nguyên vẹn nó sẽ không còn. Nếu mà trải qua từ thầy đến trò thì cái cách truyền nói như vậy, khi mà trò truyền đến người trò của trò nữa thì chắc chắn là cái bài bản này nó sẽ bị biến dạng một chút nữa. Và hiện tại em cũng đang thực hiện một công trình nghiên cứu khoa học cấp trường về nghiên cứu các bài bản và ký âm lại âm nhạc A-dây tại đoàn nghệ thuật Khmer Ninh Bình. Hiện tại thì em muốn sẽ trở thành một giáo viên dạy nhạc để truyền lửa lại cho cái thế hệ sau. Dạ, và bên cạnh đó thì chúng em có thể là vừa biểu diễn vừa giảng dạy. Dạ. Điều quan trọng hiện tại thì em cũng muốn là trong tương lai thì thế hệ trẻ hiện tại thì chúng ta dành một phần nào đó để nghiên cứu cũng như tiếp xúc với âm nhạc truyền thống để cùng chung tay nhau giữ gìn và phát huy được giá trị bản sắc văn hóa của tộc người mình.
Alrighty, does anybody have questions? Okay, going once. Do you want to come up to the microphone, or? You don't have to if you don't want to, I guess. It's up to the production people. Okay. That's a very good question. This Global Eyewitness as a program is set up for a year-long program. So in the fall, ideally, we're supposed to research for 16 weeks to get an idea of our story. In this case, our class had the misfortune that we were no longer able to go to our original province. They got a new director. He wasn't a fan of journalism students. And so Traven University was luckily able to host us and was willing to host us. So we kind of had to make things up on the fly. And then in my case, the story idea that I had planned to do originally was about language, Khmer language. But when I got there, I hadn't been informed that all the students were on winter break. And so it wasn't until 4 or 5 days into the trip that I had to change my story entirely and do it about Khmer music. So it was a very, very challenging turnaround and probably one of the most challenging aspects of this project. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
If you would come to the microphone, please. Not everybody has the big booming outdoor voice. So if you could come to the microphone with your questions, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Hi. Oh.
Hi.
How has this helped you grow as like a student and a journalist?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think it's helped me grow twofold. The first is, of course, I'm a very planned person. Everyone who went on this trip knows that about me. And with the fact that we were changing our story on the fly, and the fact when you're working in a country that has a communist government, they tend to be very restrictive about what you can and can't do regarding journalism. And so being able to kind of adapt to that and just recognize I wasn't going to be able to do things the same way that I did journalism here in the United States, I would say that that was my biggest growth, was learning to adapt to that challenge and just not being able to have a really good, solid plan or a lot of agency in my story. The other growth was, of course, just culturally. I hadn't been to an Asian country before, and particularly Southeast Asia has a lot of unique cultural elements that were new to me. I did experience a lot of culture shock while I was there, which I didn't expect because I've traveled abroad before. I studied abroad in Namibia this past summer, and so I was like, I've got this. International travel should be easy for me at this point, and it wasn't. It was very challenging culturally for me to like learn to adapt to certain expectations in the culture, even like moral views on things that I just wasn't expecting. And so I think it pressed me outside of my comfort zone and to like learn about a new perspective.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned about dancing.
Yes.
Want to show us something?
Oh, no, that's okay. We'll save that for after the performance. I mean, after the screening. It's harder than it looks, but that was the dance that they were doing in there. Yeah.
Let me get the microphone
first. What specifically drew you to the Khmer culture?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of just a product of the province that we were at. Not all provinces have Khmer people because they're an ethnic minority, but there was like a high concentration of them in Tra Vinh. And so when we were like Googling, trying to figure out what to do, really the two things that we could find to do were with the university or with the temples. And so I visited a lot of temples too, which you saw some of those photos in my gallery, because I was originally trying to find out if I could do a story about the monks at the temple, but they practiced Theravada Buddhism in Vietnam. And because I was a woman, like that wasn't considered like culturally acceptable for me to like follow around a monk. And so that was another story option that went out there when I was trying to figure out what I could still do. And I ended up running into We actually at when I was talking to a professor about what stories I could and couldn't do. And they said, well, we have this music student who's here who, like he hasn't left for winter break, like he would be a cool subject for you. And he's really passionate about music. And I met him briefly at a birthday party. So I just kind of went with the flow at that point because I didn't really have an option. And also he was just so open and friendly, even though it was finals week, to me following him around. And so, yeah.
Okay, Marissa, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Terrific start. Next up is a senior journalism major from Omaha, Jamie Reef. Jamie.
Hi everyone, great to be here today. As you saw in Sean's video, almost didn't make it out of Vietnam, thanks to my appendix, but I did, and so you all get to see what I did. Okay, so we'll start with my photo gallery. This is a water snake. I was on an on-campus hatchery at TVU, which is Tra Vinh University, and I was terrified of these things at first, but I did end up holding the snake, fun fact. But this snake is typically bred and then sold to be eaten in the Tra Vinh province. It's pretty normal that they eat snakes and frogs, which was actually really cool for me. I asked what they taste like. Apparently they taste like chicken. I didn't try them, but maybe next time. So they will breed the frogs and they'll either sell them themselves, students have a startup program, or they will feed them to these snakes. This is a picture we took when we were in District 1, is it 1 or 7? District 1 in Ho Chi Minh. I truly loved this alleyway because I loved that there were photos from clearly a young child and then older people sitting right there. I come from a post-Soviet family, so stuff like this kind of hits home. The man sitting in the tank top reminded me a lot of my grandfather from Lithuania, who unfortunately I haven't seen in like 10 years because he passed away, but it did something for me. And so it's one of my favorite photos from the trip and one of my favorite moments even. This is these lovely men. So in that glass is either beer or iced tea. I don't know for sure which one. But it's fairly common that in the morning or when it starts to get hot, they take breaks to either drink iced tea. Some people will drink beer. Later on the trip, I did get to experience this with iced tea at an off-campus hatchery in Travin, which was really cool. But the culture of them always being together and spending time with each other was a really beautiful thing. And one of my favorite parts about Vietnam, because in the States we're very isolated people, understandably so, but it's very beautiful to see people just sit with each other because we don't do that here. This was a man when we were on Kanto Island. Yep, my pronunciations are not great. But we were making soft-boiled eggs, and he was throwing hay in the fire. This was a really fun process. We each got to make an egg and try them. I don't really like eggs, but I did try it. My family's going to be proud of me for that. I don't try things. This was our boat driver for that same island. This was on the way back. I was sitting at the front of the boat, just kind of relaxing, and I noticed that he was really into his job, and I really loved what he was doing, so I made sure to get a picture of him because I think a lot of people like that get underappreciated, especially by tourists and things like that, so I wanted to highlight what he does. This was also on the island. This little girl was looking at the koi fish. It's one of my favorite pictures from the trip as well. It's just very sweet. It reminds me of me as a little kid. I traveled a lot, so I was running away. You could ask my dad, he's back there. I ran away in airports sometimes to get into trouble. So just the adventurous spirit of her was really awesome to see because she was shy if you came up to her, but if you stood from afar, she loved doing all these crazy things like the koi and touching other animals on the island and the plants and all these things. So she was really cute. This was when they were celebrating Tet, which is Vietnamese New Year's. Travin University has a little rice cake making contest, which is what they're making here. The rice is all dyed by flowers or natural things. They're not dyed by like food coloring or anything like that. So these 3 women were putting some together for that competition. So they'll put it in there and then they wrap it in those leaves and then they boil it for like 24 hours and it sticks together. It's actually really tasty. But you can put all different things in it. Some people will put meat in it. Some people will put bananas in it. It just depends on what kind of rice cake they want to make at that time. This was the coconut man that Sean did have to pay. Again, I just like to highlight these people that are doing things that might get overlooked a lot, especially by tourists. I've traveled a lot in my life, and I've seen the people who do these things, and it's their living, and people just kind of look by it or don't blink it or don't bat an eye, and to them it's just another man pedaling. But to me, it's a man working and, you know, sustaining himself or his family, or maybe he's just doing it for fun. But either way, it's really cool to me to see people doing people things. I said that a lot on the trip. It was probably annoying, but this is a frog. This frog specifically is a little iffy. This is after he escaped from his quarantine because he's sick. And he just kept staring at me. There's a picture back there. You can see when Nam, my subject, is holding the frog looking really mad. It's because he had escaped again. To be fair, though, the quarantine was a bucket on top of the frog. So that's not a really great quarantine. But he does his best to make sure that the other frogs in the hatchery don't get sick so that the students' projects aren't ruined or their startup initiatives. And then this was at an off-campus hatchery.
They were actually getting baby shrimp from the ocean to put them in a freshwater stream, and then there's this whole complicated process, which I'm so sorry, guys, I don't know much more about, because that was the day before I went and had my surgery, so I didn't get to learn more. But I would love to have told you guys so much more about that process. This was originally going to be my photo story, but I didn't have as much access to it once I got back to Trabin. So this is my photo story. It's called A Day in Nam. I'm one for puns. I'm my father's daughter, so that's where I got that from. And my subject's name is Nam, and we were in Vietnam. And yeah, okay. So this is Nam in this big area. This is right in front of the hatchery, actually. In that tub, there's snakes, water snakes. The mother water snake lives there, and the father water snake. And that's like, and then they take the small ones, and one of the small ones is the one that you saw first. That's not even one of the big ones. They're kind of scary, but he was very amazing. He was willing to give me a lot of his time, even when I had crunched time, pre and post op. This is Nam on this really dingy bridge. Behind him, you'd see these section things. Those are catfish. It's a student project that he's running where they're feeding different amounts of food and different kinds of food to the catfish and comparing how they grow, which I did actually get to see the students measuring them, which was really cool. I couldn't tell you the difference, but it was still really cool to watch. I did walk across this bridge. It's really scary, but I recommend it. This is said tank with snakes. This is the mother snake. He was just checking on her to make sure she's doing well. So every morning, Nam goes to the hatchery at about 6 in the morning, 5:30, and he spends the morning making sure that the animals are doing okay. If any of them are sick, how can he help? And as Marissa mentioned, it was winter break for a lot of students, so he was spending extra time there, ensuring that student projects weren't being disrupted just because they were gone. This is an up high angle of those frogs. Guys, they will jump out at you if you're taking pictures like this. I promise, it's scary. But this is him checking them for that disease. So the frog that I showed earlier was bloated because it was sick. So you can see him grabbing the stomach and kind of feeling around to ensure that there's no bloating in the other frogs and not spreading the disease. This is just a really close-up of a frog, but they're really cool once you're there. I stepped in a frog tank and stood in it with 50 frogs around my feet. I made choices. Oops. This is Nam preparing the fish food. So like I mentioned, there's that catfish stuff that happens, but there are other fish that he feeds as well on the on-campus hatchery. So they mix the food here. The students do it themselves as well for that measuring for that program, and this is him doing it. This is him with some students. They were measuring the catfish at this time, which again was a really cool process. He is a really good teacher in the way that he lets them learn by doing. He doesn't like to just lecture, and he believes that you achieve by doing. So if you mess up, you've just learned something, and now you're going to learn not to do it in the future, or what you can do differently. So he likes the more hands-on way of teaching, because especially in this sphere of work, you kind of have to be hands-on. He doesn't like the new approach of online, only just talking. He wants his students to gain real-world knowledge so that they're prepared when they graduate. This is him feeding the frogs. This is just a lower angle. These tubs are actually really tall. They're probably 4 foot something. So there were a few times I was about to fall in, but that's neither here nor there. This is the bloated frog that escaped its quarantine. This is right after. I think his face is funny because that's exactly how you would feel if your bloated frog escaped quarantine for the second time in front of this girl who's just taking pictures of you. And this, he is cleaning out a little eel tank. So there's little eels that they take care of on the on-campus hatchery. They're really cute from afar. And so every day he'll go through and clean the tank, and he also will put a net in and kind of like shake it and then find the ones that have passed away, and he just tosses them on the ground. But he disposes of the ones that have passed away so that it doesn't affect the experiment too much. And this is at the end of the day, or, well, I guess the students' end of day. He likes to say goodbye to the students he knows. He's very close to the students. It was really cool to watch him interact with them because you could tell that they respected him, but they also saw him as someone that they could come to, which, from what I gathered while I was there from talking to students, a lot of times your professor is just someone above you, and that's how you interact with them. You might not necessarily have that one-on-one relationship like us with Sean. That's a great example. But it's not as common because that's a professional figure. So seeing that was really cool because I watched them interact with other professors and they didn't feel as comfortable. And then with him, it was beautiful. And then we are gonna watch my documentary. Before we start, I wanna give Hayden a lot of props because he got a lot of B-roll for me when I couldn't bend, twist, move, or get in frog tanks anymore because I just had surgery. So big props to Hayden for that.
Tên đầy đủ là Hồ Khánh Nam, sinh năm 1982, ở trường Đại học. Đang hiện tại là đang đưa vô là thử nghiệm bên các thảo dược, cây thảo dược thì các loại bệnh. Giờ mình đang nghiên cứu ví dụ như các loại bệnh đó sử dụng thảo dược gì, thảo dược nó phù hợp với cái loại bệnh đó, từng loại bệnh đang nghiên cứu đến đó. Hơn 1 năm nay là đang hướng dẫn những đứa sinh viên đang làm hướng ra đang làm những cái loại bệnh nghiên cứu lên thảo dược, cây cỏ đó. Là cái sinh viên đạt được thành công á, là cái mô hình là thực tế những gì trực tiếp. Ví dụ như anh muốn dạy con cá thì mình phải bắt con cá lên mình nói cụ thể. Rồi ví dụ như con cá đó là để sinh sản hoặc là tiêm thuốc thì mình làm trực tiếp như vậy thì hiệu quả hơn so với nói về lý thuyết. Lý thuyết thì mình nói suông trên lý thuyết, cái thực tế nó không thấy. Mình làm trực tiếp chúng nó mình nói thấy đây là thực tế lý thuyết. Hình như trước nè là em làm là một C, mình chích ở đâu thì bây giờ là con cá này em chích trực tiếp như vậy đó, làm vậy đó thì các em sẽ hiểu hơn, cho rõ hơn. Và năng suất là cái điều mong là cái sinh viên đạt được thành công á, là cái mô hình là thực tế, những gì thực tế trực tiếp. Ví dụ như anh muốn dạy con cá thì mình phải bắt con cá lên mình nói cụ thể, rồi ví dụ như con cá đó là để sinh sản hoặc là tiêm thuốc thì mình làm trực tiếp như vậy thì hiệu quả hơn so với nói về lý thuyết thì mình nói suông trên lý thuyết, cái thực tế nó không thấy. Mình làm trực tiếp chúng nó mình nói thấy đây là thực tế lý thuyết. Hình như trước nè là em làm là một C mình chích ở đâu thì bây giờ là con cá này em chích trực tiếp như vậy đó, làm vậy đó thì các em sẽ hiểu hơn cho rõ hơn.
Any questions?
Okay, so as far as the snakes go, were they venomous, or do they bite often? What was your experience with the snakes, and I guess the frogs too?
So the snakes that I got to work with were not venomous, which led me to hold one, which I do have a picture of it. I promise it happened. But no, those ones are not venomous. I didn't get to learn too much, unfortunately. I asked, but the translator didn't tell me much about them. But the frogs themselves, they'll just jump on you. It's kind of freaky. Like I said, I stood in that frog of like 50 frogs. They're just coming up at you, and people are laughing at you because why is this random girl just standing in a tub of frogs in her overalls? But it was a great experience, truly. These are things that, like, when I was little, I used to love to catch frogs in cups. So seeing them that big was really weird, but it was kind of nice to connect with like a former part of myself that loved playing with frogs. And now here I am standing amongst them. But it was really cool to see the bloated frog, honestly. I had never really thought about frogs getting sick. And when I sat down with Nam for his interview, he talked about it's becoming more prominent in that area due to global warming and the effects that it's having. And then he talked about his herbal way of studying, because to export the fish or frogs or snakes, they have to have a certain level of standard, and using antibiotics sometimes decreases the standard that European countries and other countries are willing to accept. So he's trying to find more natural ways so that Travin and future people in Travin are still able to make a living off of things like that.
But what was the purpose of having to stand in the pool of frogs?
Realistically, it was for fun, but I did get some really cool photos out of it. I was able to get really close to them, whereas those basins, like I said, they probably come up to here, so I was like tippy toe. And I think I just I was with Sean, he was there that day. I looked at him, I said, can I get in the pit of frogs? And he was like, sure, okay. No. No, because the snakes, like, they're in water, but they also get fed the frogs. So in the water, it's reddish because of the frogs, and I didn't want to stand in that. So I was like, I will just stand in the frog pit. I did wash my feet really well after that. In fact, I took a shower right when I got back to the hotel, which, lucky for me, I got appendicitis that day too, so... It was not the frogs' fault, though. I don't blame the frogs. Someone asked me that. I do not blame the frogs.
Nam was tapping a spoon against the side of the tank? Was he trying to condition the animals or something? Or
No, so that's the eel tank. So that's one of the few eel tanks that are on that on the on-campus hatchery. So when he taps them, it kind of like wakes them up and gets them to move. I mean, they're not sleeping, but they have a reaction. So he's able to look in and see which ones are moving, which ones aren't, and if he needs to kind of like swing the brush through and get some that have passed. And he also uses that to feed them. So he'll feed and then tap. And I think it kind of alerts them that food's there, but also move around so I can see and make sure that you're all doing well. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
At the Cohen JMC, we are very proud of our experience labs, and Jamie will be heading up the frog tub standing experience in the coming semesters, so we all look forward to that someday. Yeah, that'll be great. All right, Jamie, thank you very much. Following Jamie is a junior journalism major and Lincoln, Nebraska native, Leah Bryan.
Am I a native if I wasn't born here? That's like actually, is that true? Am I a native if I wasn't born here? Sure. Okay, yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Leah. I'm a journalism major. If I could, I would be a photojournalism major. Photos are my thing, but UNL does not offer that yet. Where's Sherry? I cannot see her. All right, let's start with my gallery. This was 11:30, right out of the hotel. After how long were our flights? It was like 14 hours combined, not counting like layovers and stuff. 17? That's so true. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it was way longer than I thought. So we were flying. We landed, got to our hotel 11:30. Sean's like, "We'll meet you downstairs in 5 minutes." So we go downstairs and we hear ABBA's Happy New Year on every block. That's like the New Year song. They were playing it all January, the whole time we were there. So these are actually two drag queens that were just a block or two away from a hotel, still lip syncing to ABBA's Happy New Year. This is just after midnight. They have this giant New Year's festival, which was really impressive because, so someone mentioned earlier, Ho Chi Minh is almost 10 million people, is their population. That's bigger than every city in the United States. Not combined, but it is bigger. The biggest city in the United States is New York City, and Ho Chi Minh was bigger than that. The biggest city I've been to, maybe Denver. And so this was a crazy first experience after like sleep deprivation and like red-eye flights, and I'm down in one of the biggest celebrations in the city. There are 7. And less than a month later, right after we left, they have Tet New Year. And so they're huge celebrations for the new calendar year is nowhere near where the Tet New Year celebrations are going to be. So I wish that we could have stayed a little bit longer. Again, Sherry. But there on the left, we have a woman digging through her purse for a card out of the ATM, and a security guard on the right. That was a culture shock for me. I've never been abroad before. This is my first experience and my only experience so far. Security, rampant everywhere. There are so many security guards at every gate, at every door, at every garage, and ATMs. Again, I've never been to a big city, ever, and I could not get an ATM to work. We were denied. We went to a market. We were trying to exchange money. I brought 5 $20 bills into the country, and I tried to exchange them. But they don't accept money if it is wrinkled. And they didn't speak English, or this one that we went to, they didn't speak English, and so they held up a sign, and it was like handwritten, "Old money, frowny face." And so we could only get 60 of my $100, and I think Jamie didn't get anything. So all that crumpled up bills, you can't bring those. Old money. This is also in Ho Chi Minh. This is a shop owner mopping up his tiles on his patio. one of my favorite things, and one of the things that I will miss so much about Vietnam, is the food. It is so good, guys. In America, you'll eat something, you'll eat your lunch, and then sometimes you have to like sit and digest. You're like, I need to go lay down after this meal. Never in Vietnam. You get like $1.50 giant bowl of pho, and you slurp up the whole thing, and you're good to go. It's energizing, and it feels good, and I miss it. There's like a bowl of pho at the Mekong rest stop between Ho Chi Minh and Tra Vinh, and it was so good, guys. We have to go back. These are at the old apartments, or this photo was taken at the old apartments. These apartments were built in the 60s for American soldiers during the U.S.-Vietnam conflict, and they have since become a hub for retirees and shopkeepers. Super busy, super compact, and just feels like a great community. I grew up, I've spent like my whole life pretty much in Lincoln, and so seeing this like super tight-knit, it's like a farmer's market on every street, and it just feels so good to be able to go out and interact with people. Towards the end of the trip, I was struggling, feeling like solitary, is that the right word? I felt alone sometimes, probably because when Jamie was in the hospital, I was in my own hotel room. I have 7 siblings, so I've never had my own bedroom. And so I was really alone for a couple days, and I felt very sad. But if you just go outside, problem solved. And you go out, you get food, and you get to meet so many incredible people. This was also super impressive. This is also taken at the old apartments in Ho Chi Minh. This is a shot down onto the street, and there are some shoppers going back and forth between shops and their homes. So this man, he mounted his motorbike, and he's holding a metal tray with 2 glass bowls on it, filled with pho. And he rode off, and he just, 25 miles an hour. And I was like, how many times have you practiced balancing these 2 bowls of pho? They are giant bowls filled to the brim. But I learned, actually, that these shops, especially in the old apartments, this community is very tight-knit, like I mentioned earlier. They're very trusting of each other. And so when you go and buy a bowl of pho or food from one of these shops, you will give them your home address or your phone number, and the shop owners will actually, when their shift is done, they'll close down their shop, and then they'll go around and pick up the bowls that they lent you for their food, which is insane. All this like sad styrofoam in restaurants in Nebraska, this would be such a better use of material. I don't know. Anyway, this is also the old apartments. This is one of my favorite shots that I've taken. I love the layering in this photo. It tells a historical, a religious story, and just a emotion of, maybe that doesn't make sense the way I'm going to say that, but an emotion of people where, like, I don't even know how to describe it, just the combination of nature and human and religion with the pagoda in the back and the communist flags. This was taken on the 2nd, and so we landed on the 31st. And so this was one of the first times, this is the first day I've ever gone out into public and seen communism out on the streets. And it was very new to me. And so that's also something about this photo that is a key moment that I'd never seen anything like this before. This man, super sweet, he was trying to sell me like a pound bag of these fruits. They're kind of like pears. They're a little harder than pears. I didn't try any. Sean didn't let us buy anything from street vendors. But Hayden did give me some pork that day. You remember that? You gave me pork. It was kind of scary, but I was okay. I didn't get sick. It was real scary. This was in the Chinatown in District 1. It's western Ho Chi Minh. It is so hot in Vietnam. I don't know if you guys know that. Literally every single day that we were in Vietnam, it was 89 degrees on the forecast. every single day. How is it so consistent? And so we were out there, and I literally forgot what it was like to feel cold, where like the other people in class and Sean would make fun of me. They'd walk past my hotel room door, and like the climate would change. You'd walk by and you'd be like, oh my God, why is it so freezing? And like the floor around my doors kind of like condensated because I had that cranked down. It is so hot. And so in here, where there's all of these goods being sold and all of these people and all of these, I think it's 6.1 acres of shops. That is so many people and so many goods that the heat just intensified. It was insane. And it did make me miss summer. At sometimes it was too much. At other times I'm like, I need to be in Pioneers Park in Nebraska. This is a caterer. My subject, Tan, his daughter had a first birthday while I was there. And so they hired a catering crew. For Vietnamese cultures, lots of them celebrate 3 key moments in the first year of you being alive. You have a giant celebration the day after you're born, and then your first month birthday, and then your 1-year birthday. And so this was a huge celebration, a 1-year birthday. And this is one of the caterers. She's frying up some prawns, which I did not indulge. I have a fear of seafood, which is really hard if you go to the Mekong region. It's really hard to avoid seafood. So this is my photo story. This is Crocier, which is Khmer for family. I kind of wanted to reflect, and I do have notes. I want to reflect a little bit on my experience in Vietnam. I learned so much that if you were to ask me everything that I learned, that would be like me asking you, tell me everything you did every day between 1st grade and 12th grade. Where it's so much knowledge and so many emotions that it's hard for me to even answer and tell you how incredible this experience was. So I will try. I don't know if you've noticed, but it is hard to find the words to like make you guys feel all of the emotions that I was able to feel when I was in Vietnam. One thing that I wish I'd gotten a better picture of, or to give you guys a better view of it, would be that in Tra Vinh, at least, they do it in Ho Chi Minh, but Tra Vinh, it was everyone, where you get a lunch break for your work day. You get a lunch break of like 1 or 2 hours. You go home, you eat lunch with your family, and then you take a nap. What? Guys, what? Because that's like their heat. That's like the peak heat of the day. That is one thing that I definitely miss. You either go have lunch and you take a nap, or you go have lunch and then have coffee. I don't like coffee, but this coffee, guys, if you've never been to Vietnam, if you don't like coffee, you will when you're in Tra Vinh. More about the Khmer family. I could cry just talking about them. I have caught myself so many times saying my family. Wait, sorry. Maybe I should move on. But like, I have such a big family. I love my family, but going and spending all of this interpersonal time, all of this intimate time with this family. It's 2 parents and 2 kids, and they live with their my subject's father and his wife. Normally, it's the other way around in Khmer culture, where you get married and you live with your parents, your wife's parents. I'm so sorry. So spending time and seeing, like Jamie mentioned earlier, that they have you have the opportunity to just sit with your family and sit with your friends and go outside and connect. And that's something that I wish I could bring back for Lincoln from Tra Vinh. Okay, first photo. This is Tan. He's holding his son, Khan. So Tan is in the black shirt. Khan is 4 years old. His birthday is actually just a few days before Phuc Han's, and Phuc Han is the daughter on the right. This was the first day that I was with them. They were so funny and they were so sweet, and I loved seeing the way that their family interacted. One thing that I was expecting was having a 12-hour time difference. Being on literally the other side of the world, I thought that life was going to be entirely different, but it's really not. And families are the same. They have different opportunities, like being able to sit, and like being in Lincoln, where in my experience, it's been so work motivated rather than family oriented. It was really nice to see that life isn't that different and people aren't that different. This second photo actually features one of Marissa's gallery photos subjects. Tan's great aunt with the pink sash. She's the one that went with Marissa to the pagoda. This is in that first year birthday celebration, where Phuc Han will sit on actually that doesn't really matter, but she's sitting on a bed made by her grandfather, and there's a platter in front of her, and there are things like there's a pencil, there's a notebook, there's a mirror, there are gold necklaces, there's a stuffed animal, there are sticky notes, and so whatever the baby picks on their first birthday is something that will symbolize them for the rest of their life. And so Phuc Han happened to, or was meant to, grab the gold jewelry, and that symbolizes fortune, and fortune's not really the right word. Let me double check, because I don't want to get that wrong. It's in my caption back there. It's not like the mirror would be beauty. The notebook would be you're going to have a great education. You're going to go and you're going to teach your kids. And you're going to teach the community around you. And so because it was Khan's birthday a few days earlier, they didn't want Khan to feel left out. And so he also is getting a golden bracelet put on by his mother. This is the flat lay. This is where Phuc Han had just been sitting. This food is meant for the ancestors of the family of the child whose birthday it is. This food, they pray over it. There's a tea kettle and there are some small cups. And so the tea kettle will be poured every so often. They repeat a prayer and they all chant it together. And between every chant, they'll pour more and more into the cup. And then once the cup is filled, it's time for the birthday child to choose their symbol. This is similar. So this is also during the birthday celebration. Khan and Tan are passing the cake knife to the wife and daughter. The table there's chicken and there's pork, and that is also another ancestor table. Everything but the cakes. This is during that chant. Khan is praying, looking up at his ancestors. He's sitting on the lap of his maternal grandparents. And these are those ancestors that Khan is looking up at. This is them during their time spent as monks. In Khmer culture, men especially will take a time away from life and go live on a pagoda. So Tan actually spent just a month, but Tan's brother spent 3 years in a pagoda. Tan's father spent 10 years, so it's really your own experience and however much time you want to have your spiritual growth. This is Tan teaching Phuc Han how to play an instrument. Tan told me that he didn't know any instruments and that he wasn't that good. He's the deputy head of the Khmer Culture, Language, and Arts College at Travin University. So Tan was just being very humble because this man is so talented at music. This is Phuc Han shoving off Khan. Khan was goofy. I thought, I have younger siblings, and so I thought that I was like, oh, I know what to expect from little kids. But Khan was all over the place. This is Tan's wife. I felt some mixed emotions about gender roles in Vietnam. Tra Vinh is comparative to Ho Chi Minh. Tra Vinh has been described as more of like a town or a village. Tra Vinh, in Nebraska terms, is not a town or a village. Tra Vinh is huge. It is bigger than Lincoln. And so I was surprised, even though it is country for Vietnam, I was surprised seeing the size of it and how people in the community do fall into their gender roles, and they all follow pretty much the same path. This is the family at dinner time. This is actually only Khan's dinner time because Khan will eat separately, just because it works easier for the family. And so Tan is trying to feed Khan, but Khan is running away, and Tan is the most patient man I have ever interacted with. It was and you'll see that in my documentary. I could not handle what Tan has to handle. So Khan is running away, trying to get interactions with his sister and his grandpa so that he doesn't have to eat his dinner. And this is bedtime. Khan is getting his teeth brushed at the sink in the kitchen. His family, you can't see it, but his family is eating dinner behind him. And so I kind of understand being a little kid being like, why does everyone else get to stay up? Why do I have to go to bed? And so his bedtime routine did take 2.5 hours. And this is Khan following his father to bed. Now it's for my documentary. I do have a note for this. Journalism in a communist country is different. I don't think that should be surprising, but there are limitations. And so my documentary, being based on what Khmer life is like, is going to look very different because of those limitations. And now we will watch.
Tôi tên là Sơn Cao Thắng. Hiện tại thì tôi 37 tuổi. Tôi là giảng viên của trường ngôn ngữ văn hóa nghệ thuật Khmer Nam Bộ thuộc trường Đại học Trà Vinh. Tôi công tác được khoảng 14 năm. Diễn cái bên nó phải chuyện gì đã xảy ra, chuyện gì đã xảy ra, nó diễn chút bắt đầu vào phía sau bấm nút. Mai biết bao nhiêu ngày mai. Bao nhiêu ngày mai cho cái điều đó, chuyện đó là một cái cách để người ta tự tưởng theo. Thì mình lên nói chuyện mô Phật bình thường, mô Phật mà những cái thể hiện là cái tại chỗ ví dụ như là chỗ vàng ngọc viên ngọc còn múa vàng, ví dụ như là nàng tiên thì ta đưa lên xem mặt con mặt tay thì những cái hành động lúc nào nó cũng mở ra ví dụ như vậy. Chơi gì vậy?
Thôi. 3, 4, 5, 6,
7,
7.
8.
Chị bỏ nè. Chị bỏ chụp hết luôn nè.
Bắt cờ cái
Chuyện mình luyện nè.
đây có một tiền đây có tiền đi theo kìa đây tôi mượn
Bỏ đây đấy, bỏ đây. Anh đúng nhiều quá rồi.
bánh luôn nhúng tay
Anh nói cái lì á.
đậm đậm mặc ổ trong này để nó đẹp
Anh lúc tôi trái.
bảy quá ui tôi quá ui bảy nào
feel like that J-Law meme, you know. You know what I'm saying?
I noticed, is it on? I noticed like a lack of like interviews or just dialogue in general. Was that like a stylistic choice, or was that one of the limitations from like doing journalism in a communist country?
That was entirely a limitation because of my story and the topic that I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover Khmer life and daily life and what it's like to be a cultural minority that is not every government's favorite. And I had to do journalism through a government organization, and so it was not supposed to be a stylistic choice, and it had to turn into a stylistic choice.
Any other questions?
Earlier you said that if you took everything we learned from first grade to 12th grade, right, that's how much you learned. What's maybe one of your favorite or perhaps least favorite things that you learned while over there?
I think one thing that I'll never forget is the feeling I feel that I might never see them again. I didn't get to spend as much time with them as I thought that I would, with scheduling and with illness and how long we were there and how much time we spent intra-vin or Tan's schedule. But in the time that I did spend with him and his family, there's a language barrier, and I felt like it wasn't there. So I won't forget that lesson of that feeling that I should be grateful and always think about relationships that I value. And I think that's definitely changed in me since I got back from Vietnam, is I feel like I tell you how I feel about you because I want you to know of how much I love you and how much I will miss you when you leave, and I'll see you the next day. I'll miss you. So I think that that's something that I've learned and put into practice.
There wasn't much about the mom,
Mm-hmm.
not even her name.
Mhm.
I mean, did you know her name? Or, I mean, why was she seem to be so kind of insignificant to the story?
Mm-hmm. That is something that also was a limitation for me. I actually never spoke to her. I do know her name. I have her name in captions too. I don't know how to pronounce it. No one said anything about her to me. She was around me, but we never interacted. And so that's something that I wish, had I had more time, I would have liked to go into that. But also that's a question that is hard, especially being who I am and looking how I look and coming into a country where I don't want to follow the stereotype of a white student journalist, saying there's something wrong with how you are being treated or how people are treating you. So that is something that I did think about and also thought about through the process of this story and being in Vietnam. And that's something that, could I go back, I would want to spend time on.
Leah, thank you. I think one thing we definitely learned from Leah's project is that the precociousness and joy and laughter of little kids is universal. That was a lot of fun to see. All right, closing out the student showcase is another Lincoln native and a junior journalism major, Hayden Rooney.
could have done the stairs, but alrighty. Since I'm going last year, I want to first thank everyone here for coming to our show. Images aren't worth a whole lot if nobody sees them, so thank you for witnessing our work. It means a lot. My name is Hayden Rooney. I'm a fourth-year broadcasting student at the university, and I am very grateful we were given the opportunity to travel across the world to experience the beautiful country of Vietnam. Like everyone before, I'm going to start by showing you some photos of personalities and experiences that I captured in Ho Chi Minh City and Tra Vinh. Oh, I had it upside down. I mean, he speaks for himself, does he not? New Year's was insane. Sean, it was 11:30, and Sean did urge us to go out, but traveling from the airport to the hotel, I think most of us were pretty excited about doing it, even if we couldn't even see straight. These are water coconuts. So if you are in the Mekong River and you are traveling by water and you look at the shore, you will see these about 2 feet out of the water. Inside, there's about this much of jelly that's delicious when put with nuts and coconut milk. And the exterior, any other way except the way he's cutting would not work. It is hard as a rock. So oftentimes you see them scattered all over. They will use them as shingles for their roofs. This man here is headed to a wholesale market with all of his goods. Lots of fabrics. There's lots of fabrics in Vietnam. Walking through the market, I saw a sign that I could have gotten a tailored suit for $80, and I didn't take it, and that's probably my biggest regret. These people are part of my story, but I thought I'd include this. That is a very large prawn. Yeah, this is in the old apartments as well. That was probably the first piece of culture shock I experienced. Was we got into the van out of the airport and we hit the road, and there are not SUVs like here in Nebraska. There are a bunch of motorbikes, and I mean stacked. In one lane, probably 4 on one motorbike, maybe 4 people as well. They travel very efficiently. Here we got some good old-fashioned crab racing. You may see some slips of paper in some of the men's hands. Those are betting slips. And here's a father and son. He drives the ferry between the island and the mainland. Alrighty. Coming up here, I will show my photo story and short documentary titled Man of the Mekong. It's a clever title because they are both about a man from the Mekong. Specifically a man named Le Van Hai, living on Con Chim Island in Tra Vinh, Vietnam. Mr. Hai is a fisherman and a farmer living with his family on land that he has been on himself for 50 years. That was one of the first things he told me, is that he was born there and he was going to die there. Oftentimes, when we turn on the news, we see a lot of world-ending events of destruction, disease, and all that great stuff. Though those stories are needed and important to witness, I find myself fascinated more with ordinary people living out their lives. The kind of people who live 20 minutes from the closest town. The people who don't stick their heads out to tell a story and just keep to themselves. I wonder how they see the world, what's important to them, and what makes them happy. In my time with my subject, Mr. Hai, and his family, I explored those themes, and seeing how hard he works day in and day out just to put food on the table, I feel was very important to witness. Here's a photo story, in short, of Man of the Mekong. So I'm out here on Mr. Hai's boat. that net that you see there is deceivingly deep into the boat. So the first time I met him, he was like, "Yeah, come on, do you want to see the boat?" And I was like, "Mm-hmm." And so we went, and I'm going down the dock, which you'll see in a later photo. And I asked, "Can I step here?" And he's like, "Yeah, go for it." And so I step and rapidly fall about 3 feet down on my keister. So, and he's just laughing. So he knew what he was doing. So this is what he is mostly pulling out of the river. It's small kind of minnows and krill that he'll then dry on his roof. Again, we'll get to that in the documentary. So this is his partner here, and then that's her grandson. He's 2 years old. Each of those steps is, I don't know, about 1.5 feet. So here is a prawn pit that he is in. He's got, he said, over 50 prawn in there, and he'll pull them out for tourists, and he'll cook them up. And I actually ate the ones that he pulled out. They were very good. But he gets very deep in there. There they are. And the dock I mentioned earlier, that's the dock. And I took a whole step into that dark pit that you see right there. Important to note, the trash you see there is not his. That is actually from the river, and it comes up with high tide. I think that's important to note. Alrighty, we'll see the video version.
Thì anh được cha mẹ sinh ra lớn lên từ nhỏ tại mảnh đất quê hương ở đây. Thì trong cuộc sống ngày xưa thì nó rất là khó khăn. Thì cuộc sống rất vất vả. Thì gia đình theo truyền thống là làm nông. Rồi không có, ngày xưa không có chăn nuôi. Rồi bây giờ kinh tế nó phát triển, mở cửa ra thì hội nhập với thế giới, thì có những sản phẩm mình xuất khẩu đi thì bà con mới chăn nuôi. Rồi cái sau này thì có cái du lịch phát triển ở địa phương, thì mình kết hợp giữa chăn thấy cái ở trên thế giới này tất cả ai cũng cần sử dụng một món ăn sạch là organic, không sử dụng thức ăn hóa chất. Thì cái công việc nhà mình đó, thì cứ sáng thì mình làm cái công việc nhà, thì đến lúc mà tùy theo con nước á, thì mình đi đánh bắt ngoài sông, mình ra mình đánh bắt ngoài sông vô rồi mình cho con tôm con cá ăn, còn số còn lại mình phân loại ra, mình mới rửa, mình phơi khô hoặc mình làm mắm. Ở ngoài sông á, thì cái con nước nó chảy, mình phân biệt được ở cái dòng nước á, nó chảy khi nó xoáy cuộn vậy á, là cái dòng nước nó không được thẳng, thì con tôm con cá nó sẽ không đi, nó lẫn quẩn trong đó, nó lẫn xình lẫn rác, mình không có làm được. Khi mình chọn được cái vị trí là cái dòng nước nó phải chạy thẳng, là nó chạy chung một chiều, thì con tôm con cá nó sẽ đi theo cái vòng nước đó, để con phù du đi theo cái dòng nước đó. Còn ở chính giữa sông á, có chỗ á, thì nó nổ cái cồn lên, thì nó cũng sẽ tạo thành một cái đường chảy nó không tốt, cho nên là mình làm không được. thì cũng có những khách đến này thấy mình ăn thì người ta cũng thử, thì mình cũng cho người ta thử, để người ta cảm thấy được, người ta nói ngon. Ô, cây xanh này sao mà bạn làm sao ngon thế? Nó nhà mình làm để dành mình ăn dần trong cái quá trình mình không có thời gian mình làm. Thì bạn nói cái này bán được, sao cả nhà mình không làm bán? Thì mình mới nảy ra cái ý tưởng để mình làm cho mình bán. Rồi mới lần đầu đó thì mình làm cũng chưa có cái gì gọi là để công nhận á, thì mình làm theo cái người dân mình làm hồi đó vậy thôi. Thì khi ở sở văn hóa mới thấy vậy, mới kêu mình làm, rồi mới đăng ký sản phẩm, rồi người ta mới kiểm định sản phẩm mình đúng là sạch chất lượng, thì người ta mới cấp cho mình cái tem, rồi cái mã QR. Rồi cái nếu mà nói gì sạch á là anh đặc biệt không cũng như là phơi những cái sản phẩm ở dưới đất, anh cứ phơi trên nóc nhà, không tin lên phơi trên nóc nhà, nó phơi trên nóc nhà là ở dưới mình phơi. Cái mã QR. Rồi cái nếu mà nói gì sạch á là anh đặc biệt không cũng như là phơi những cái sản phẩm ở dưới đất, anh cứ phơi trên nóc nhà, không tin lên phơi trên nóc nhà, nó phơi trên nóc nhà là ở dưới mình phơi. Ô, cây xanh mà nói gì sạch á là anh đặc biệt không cũng như là phơi những cái sản phẩm ở dưới đất, anh cứ phơi trên nóc nhà, không tin lên phơi trên nóc nhà, nó phơi trên nóc nhà là ở dưới mình phơi ở dưới thì nó sẽ bị bụi, rồi con côn trùng này kia nọ, mình phơi trên là tuyệt đối. Tự hào nhất là mình được sống ở một cái miền quê nó tách biệt khỏi đất liền, là mọi thứ nó đều tốt, mọi thứ đều sạch sẽ, là mình tự hào về cái điều đó. Nhìn lại bản thân anh 20 năm trước, thì 20 năm trước mình không có biết hưởng thụ, không nghĩ đến cảm giác cho bản thân mình. Thì 20 năm trước hồi còn trẻ thì mình cứ nghĩ về đồng tiền, thì mình lo đi buôn ba ngoài xã hội làm kiếm tiền, thì bất chấp thời gian ngày đêm thì mình chỉ kiếm một cái đồng tiền để xây dựng một cái tương lai. Thì ai cũng muốn mình có cái đồng tiền được nhiều hơn người khác. Con người mình ai cũng vậy thôi, chỉ những người mà dứt bỏ hết tất cả mọi thứ, người ta không có cần thôi. Chứ còn lòng tham ai mình cũng có, mình được một rồi mình muốn được hai mình muốn được 10. Ngày xưa anh là một người phụ hồ, Thì anh ước gì anh làm một người thợ hầu giỏi. Khi anh làm được một người thợ hầu giỏi thì anh ước được gì một người anh coi cai. Thì anh coi cai rồi mình muốn một người coi cai giỏi tất cả mọi thứ, thì cũng vì cái lòng tham, cũng vì kiếm tiền, thì làm cho con người mình nó quên đi chính bản thân mình. Thì bây giờ mình nhìn nhận lại 20 năm trước là nên khuyên lại bản thân mình đã biết đủ rồi. Còn nếu mà tiền thì trên thế giới này không ai kiếm được hết tiền của cả thế giới này, thì mình biết vừa đủ rất là nhiều. Nói chung cái lĩnh vực kiếm tiền nào nó cũng phải đánh đổi bằng sức khỏe và chất xám của mình, thì mọi điều đó nó đều làm ảnh hưởng đến cơ thể của mình, không sống được nó lâu hơn. Thì mình nên hưởng thụ rồi mình tận hưởng không khí thiên nhiên của trời đất, mình tự do thì cuộc sống mình cảm thấy nó rất là thú vị.
Thank you. Even though we had some technical difficulties, any questions?
Were you up on the roof?
I got on the ladder. I did not get on the roof. Yep. The 2-year-old was much braver than I.
He seemed like a really wise man. What was your biggest takeaway from him, like piece of wisdom that impacted you the most?
I think that he had gone through a lot in his life, and looking back now, he realizes that he was enough and that what he's doing is enough, and he's kind of living carefree. So I kind of took away that carefree attitude and just knowing that you're enough as you are. And every little thing that you do is enough. You don't have to do, the biggest things to be an important person.
Any other questions? Right here.
How'd you come across this story? The others are kind of related to the university. This one kind of seemed far-fetched. How'd you stumble on it?
I was looking at that island. It's called Kam Chim Island. It's an eco-tourist area. And I had kind of told the university people about it, and they were like, great, we'll get you some people in a car, and we'll get you out there for a couple days. And so when I got to the island, I didn't really know what I was going to find there. And then I found Mr. High, and within 5 minutes, he said, do you want to see my boat? And then within a couple more minutes, he said, yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I like the cameras and stuff. And I was like, all right, sweet. We'll wait for the mic.
Where can we find this YouTube channel?
We will have to post it. We'll post it with the rest of these videos and everything. We'll put it right below my video. It's good stuff. It's daily uploads too. Catches of the day, how he's feeling. It's good, yeah. That first clip actually in the doc is from his YouTube.
All right, Kate, thank you. How many people are relieved that Hayden is not going to have to redo his final project? Yeah, I think we're all a little nervous for a while. All right, before we say goodbye for the evening, Professor Hill would like to say a few final words and make some presentations. Sean?
First, I do need to say one thing. I asked them if they wanted to go out for New Year's. I did not tell them to go out at all. It was just suggested, and they did. They went. I have told them probably midway through the trip, how much I appreciated all the hard work they did. And I told them again when we got back here at the beginning of the semester. So I wanted to tell them publicly, thank you again for all the hard work that you did. It showed, and I really do appreciate it. So now, having said that, Marissa, as you have heard, she had difficulty with her story, and she did. And we battled with it and through it, and she made the most out of it. And I wanted to thank you for doing it. All right? No, you can stay. No, you can stay. Jamie. As you know, Jamie had a little incident in the hospital, but she came through it and did some of the things that she needed to do to tell her story, and it worked out. So thank you. However, Professor Graves really wants that print in the back.
Oh, the snake one.
The snake print.
We'll put it on your door.
It's going to be framed for you.
We'll put it on your door. It'll be just for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Here you go. Thank you. So Leah spoke for 2 hours, I think, tonight. And she was in my 306 class, was it 2 years ago? No. Last year?
Last January.
Okay, last January. Time flies. So when she would come in the class, she would have her headphones on and not speak or say anything to anybody. So imagine my surprise on the trip and even now where she is just blossomed and talking, and I love it. So thank you, Leah. So for Hayden, literally my first class teaching in this university, JGen 184, Hayden sat right beside me. And for that class, I literally went 0 to 60, and he was the only one that went with me. Everybody else dropped off because I literally went too fast for them, and none of them were photographers. So I had to dial it back in, but he stayed with me. Even from that first class, I knew I always wanted Hayden to come on this trip because I wanted to see what he could do. And I'm glad that you came. I'm proud of the work that you did, and thank you. One more round of applause for these students. Thank you. That is the show for the night, and I want to thank you guys for coming and seeing their work that they did. And for the 8 or 9 people that are online, live streaming, thank you for watching this. And again, thank you guys for all the work that you did. I really appreciate it. You don't know how much it does mean to me, what you guys did. All right? Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Real quick, I also feel like we need a round of applause for Sean. This trip would not be possible without him, and thank you so much to Sean for all his hard work. It's not an easy trip, and we certainly gave him hell, but he stuck with us, and we appreciate him for sticking with this program.
Thank you, guys.